Hi everybody, welcome back to Small Caliber Arms Review. Today we're going to be doing another movie holster, or in this case, a TV show holster. Now, back in 1958 to 1961, CBS ran a series called Wanted, Dead or Alive, which starred Steve McQueen, who played a really cool bounty hunter named Josh Randall. It was a spin-off from another TV Western that starred Robert Culp called Trackdown, and in there that's when we get introduced to the character Josh Randall, and he carries a very unique weapon called the Mare's leg. He calls it the Mare's leg because it's kind of like a hog leg but not quite so mean.
Well, I call it a mare's leg. Kind of like a hog's leg, only not quite so mean.
It is a cut down 1892 Winchester lever action. Now, most, the TV Westerns of the day, everybody carried a, probably a Colt Peacemaker or maybe a Remington or something like that. They all carried revolvers. And the show's producer, John Robinson, wanted him to carry something a little more unique, something that would really catch someone's eye. Now, is it a practical firearm? No. But it's definitely a memorable one. When you see this, you've seen the TV show, you know what this gun is, and it's the only character that ever carried one. Did not really exist in the Old West, and is considered a pistol because it has less than a 16-inch barrel and does not have a buttstock on it because you can't shoulder it like this. You shouldn't. That's whole ATF BS stuff. Anyways, this is a pistol, and in it he does some spin cocks with it. He does thumb it to fire it. He does do some quick draw stuff. A very unique holster for this firearm too, because he does wear it on his side. Now you'll see it's got a saddle ring on it, so it is a saddle ring, and that is what holds it in the holster, and there's a little clip down at the bottom that keeps it from flopping around instead of just hanging on that hook right there. Now, there's several different things in this holster's design that kind of make it a little odd. And I don't know who made the original holster, whether it was Andy Anderson or Arvo Ojola or Ohola or however you say it. So I don't know who made the original, but there's a lot of reproductions out there, and the reproductions just don't look like the TV show. At least a lot of them don't. And I like to make it as close to the TV show or the movie as I can. Now, some of the things are kind of hard to find. This belt is extremely wide. It's about 4 inches wide. So the only buckle I could find is actually, this is called a Santa buckle. It's for making a Santa belt. I'm going to have to cut it down a little bit, and this one is brass, but it's the closest thing I could find to the actual movie buckle. Now this thing measures 4 inches tall from top to bottom, and if you look at the border on his buckle, it's a little narrower than this one. This one's kind of wide, so I am going to end up cutting it down to make it look a little narrower than it is tall. It's obviously narrower than it is tall anyways, but a little closer to the movie holster. Now this one is brass and it has been lacquered, so I'll have to strip all the lacquer off of it, cut it down, shape it, smooth it out and everything to get it to look more like the movie holster. And I'm probably going to have to nickel plate it because I believe his was either nickel plated or chrome plated. I'm not entirely sure, but I want to make it look a little more like it. Now, one of the things I am going to do that they did in the movie holster, and it benefits me either way, is the original gun was chambered in .44-40, which is a .44 Winchester centerfire, sometimes it's called. My gun, my Mare's leg here, is chambered in .45 Colt, which is pretty close to the same height as a .44-40, but the diameter's a little bit different. And in the movie holster, they actually put .45-70s in the holster, which will not work in this firearm, but the producer wanted those on the holster so it would look more intimidating. Now, the nice thing about .45-70s and .45 Colts is they will both fit in the same bullet loops pretty comfortably, so I don't have to worry about that. .44-40s will not fit in there. They're a little smaller diameter. They're a little loose fitting in the holster. But anyways, I'm going to get this stuff all cleared off the table here, and we're going to get to starting on the pattern, and then we're going to start making the holster itself. Okay, so one of the very first things I got to do is I got to get this thing narrowed down, because that's going to help me set the scale of the belts and everything. I don't know exactly how wide the belt is. It looks like it's about 4 inches, but if I put this buckle on here, which is the buckle outsides are the same height as the actual belt, it narrows down a little bit where it goes through the belt there. So I know that this opening is 3 inches. But I don't want the belt to be a full 4 inches. I want it to be the same height as the buckle itself. So I've got to cut this down, because if you look at his buckle in the photos, the screenshots that I've got, it's not quite this wide on here. And right now this thing is, let's see, it is a 1/2 inch wide. We're going to make it a 1/4 inch wide all the way around there. So the buckle will end up being 3.5, or the belt will end up being 3.5 inches tall, because I want to make this thing just a 1/4 of an inch wide all the way around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my scribe out here, and I'm going to narrow this thing down. All right, get this all marked out, and then I'm going to have to get the hacksaw out and start trimming this thing up to make it look right. Okay, so that's about as close as I can get it to the movie one, the TV show one, without fabricating one of my own. This is off-the-shelf parts that I've modified. It is still a little bit wider, but it's going to be a little bit closer, because right now it is 3.5 inches tall, which I think is going to be a lot closer to the original one, with a 4570 cartridge being 2.5. This would be 3.5. Give me a 1/2 inch on top and bottom of the cartridges, which is about right, I think, anyways. And there's a couple other things with this holster. It's single layer, so there's no stitching, there's no tooling or anything to do on it. And one of the things I do like is that the belt and the holster piece itself are separate, and that helps save a lot of leather, because that would be a big chunk of leather to cut out the belt with that drop piece on there to do it. And it looks like there's 5 rivets on there that hold the holster to the belt. And another thing I noticed, and yes, I like stitching my bullet loops on. I did the one up there, Have Gun Will Travel, the Paladin holster. It was the first one I actually looped the bullet loops through. Yep, it was that one. And these are looped through on this one too, but instead of a single hole with the loop coming through around the round and then back through that same hole, this looks like there's 2 holes in there, and the bullet loop comes up through one, goes around the bullet, and then back in through a separate hole there. I might have to do a little experimenting to see if I can get this right, because I haven't done them like that before, so it might be a little bit trickier, and there's still pattern stuff to do, all kind of stuff. Let's get busy. Okay, I've got me a scrap piece of leather here that I believe is going to be the same weight as what I'm using for the belt and the holster. And what I'm going to do is cut out a piece here 3.5 inches wide of this scrap. Now when I did the Paladin rig, I made me a little piece here. This is just a 2-inch wide piece of scrap, and I practiced with the belt loops through here, and I established my spacing and everything and went by that, and I got it marked up 44/40, 9-ounce belt, 5-ounce loops, and I'm going to use, it'll be about the same. Let me get my doohickey here and we'll see what the weight of this is. So for the belt piece, it is, oh, that's about almost 8 ounce. And then the piece of the scrap I got here, that's about 3.5 ounce for the belt loops, or the bullet loops. I got nothing that says what this actually is. So I'm going by my guesstimates from the movie stuff. Now, the bullet loops themselves look like I've got some 4570s here, and if I were to guess on the spacing of those, I would say that they are one bullet between each one of those, somewhere around there, and we'll call that, you know what, we're going to go an even inch in between there, because it's just a little over an inch if I put one bullet between there. But we're going to call it 1 inch, and that looks pretty good on the spacing there. That's center to center on the bullets there. So if we go an inch on those, and I went 11/16 between these, yeah, that was 11/16. So we're going to go a full 16/16 between these, a full inch, a lot bigger bullets. The spacing on his holster does appear to be a little bit wider than what they were on the Paladin rig. Now, I have not figured out how many bullet loops were on his belt, but I'm thinking it looks like there's about 40. There is one place where I can see from the right-hand side, I started counting back there, and I can count 20 of them. And that's probably about halfway around his belt there. So it looks like there could be 40. Now, these are not the same rounds I'm betting that he used. These are Hornady subsonic ammunition. These are 4570s, 410 grain sub X. They are a flex tip bullet, and they are expensive. 4570s are about, I think I paid 50 bucks a box for these. So it cost me 100 bucks just to put enough bullets in this thing to make the holster. Another thing I'm going to do on here is I need to cut a strip of this out, the thin stuff here. I'll cut it off the end, and it looks like it's about, oh, I would say, let's see what I made the other ones, because that looks to be about right. 3/4 of an inch. So I am going to make 3/4 of an inch on these. I'll cut a strip out. Actually, I don't even need to do that, because I'm going to use my strap cutter here. These things can be dangerous. These two little plastic pieces right here cover the ends of the blade, and if you're not careful, if one of those falls off, it will cut you. And we'll set this at 3/4 of an inch. We'll get our gap about right on there. Yep, I think that'll do it. These can be a little bit of a pain to get started. In fact, it might actually be easier to start it from this end. There we go. Wonderful tool. I may have to put a new blade on it one of these days. I've cut a few straps with that thing already. So now I've got a strip here that is 3/4 of an inch wide. We'll trim off some of this kind of wonky ends. We'll leave that one on there. And then what I'm going to do is, I think his bullet loops are not quite the center, but not too far to the top. So I'm going to say, let's find the center of this thing. That's a pretty cool ruler here too. I got it at one of the woodworking shops like Rockler or can't remember the other one. But we went, it's a centering ruler, so you can find the center of something. Just look at, it starts in the middle and goes, your measurements go each way there. So we're looking at 1 3/4 on each side to give me 3.5. And we'll mark the center. And come down here, do the same thing. And I'm just going to put me a center line on there. It doesn't matter. This is not going to be a finished product piece, so this is just to help me establish what goes where. Now I would say the way the bullet loops look in there, they're not quite in the center. The bullet loops are not centered on there, but I think the bottom edge of the bullet loop is at the center line there, just because of the way it looks. And then we're going to go center to center, 1 inch on each one of these. And I'm just going to put 1 inch marks on there. Now I need to find my 3/4 inch oval punch. All right, I found it. I'm going to get some holes punched in this thing. I sharpened this up a little bit, and let's put one of these on here and see. We want these to go above there. So I'm going to center one up. And I'm going to put a light pencil mark. Okay, I got a couple pencil marks there. Let's do this. I'm going to start that on there. There we go. And do another one right beside it. And then we'll take this strap, go through here, pull it back through. Obviously that will work for one. I think it'll actually work for all of them. Let's go ahead and do the next one over there. We'll pull this out of the way and check my spacing on there. We're gonna go 7/16 of an inch between them and see how that works out. All right, now we've got 4 in there. 7/16 of an inch between them. And I think that'll work out pretty good right there. I think that spacing looks good. I think everything there is going to look pretty good. No stitching in between there. I could probably go just a little bit narrower between them. I'm going to try a couple more of them at 3/8 of an inch, see if that looks any better. And this should not give me that weird stretch that I had on the Paladin holster. 3/8 might be a little bit nicer looking, because that kind of tucks the holes underneath the bullets a little bit more, makes the bullet loop look like it wraps around a little bit more instead of going straight down in there. I think the 3/6 or 3/8 will be a little bit nicer. So we're going to go with 3/8 on there. Now I'm going to trim up a little bit to get the belt loop on there just to see how that looks, or the belt buckle. So here's what I came up with for the belt part of it. 3.5 inches wide, because my buckle is 3.5 inches tall, and I want it to be the same height as the buckle. Narrows down to 3 inch there, because technically it's a 3-inch buckle, because they go by the belt size in the middle there. And my loops are going to be 1 inch apart on the centers. I did a couple of them at 7/16 between the spacing on the cutouts for the loops, and a couple of them at 3/8, and I think the 3/8 looks a little bit better. These are for 45/70s, but like I said, a 45 Colt will fit in there just fine. And I think everything looks pretty close to the same spacing and size and everything as the TV show holster. Now, one of the things you cannot do with bullet loops is once you've got them in there and they get fit to the bullet, you can't tighten them up. The only thing you can really do is maybe put a little something on the inside there to kind of bush it to make it a little bit smaller, but you can't tighten the leather up once they're already set there. Now these, when they're laced through like that, they don't fit the tightest up against there. So I think what I'm going to do, it may take me a little while to do it, but when I do each one of these, I'm going to pull them through one at a time, and I may actually take, if I'm not mistaken, let me grab a 45 Colt real quick. The 45 Colt may actually be just a little bit smaller diameter. I may fit them up with 45 Colts, do them one at a time, and actually put a little contact cement behind there between the back of the belt and the front part of the bullet loop on the back side there. Pull it tight, let it tack up, and do it in between each one of them. Now I can run glue all the way down here in between each one of these, let that tack up, and then I have to do each one of the bullet loops one at a time, really, so I make sure I don't get glue on the outside of anything. But the 45 Colts may be a little bit smaller. If nothing else, I could fit them up to a 44-40, which is a lot smaller, and then I could force the 45-70s down in there, and they would definitely fit tight. Another thing I can do is the 45-70s are a little narrower as you get toward the bullet, a little wider as you get toward the rim there, so I could just put them in just a little bit, let them tighten up and everything, and then later on force them the rest of the way in. The thing I don't want to have happen is I don't want these things, the first time I put anything in there, for them to be stretched out and then the bullets just want to, you know, ride all the way down or bounce around and stuff. Now, he doesn't keep his all perfectly in line in his belt, and you're not going to be able to when you're out riding and, you know, bounty hunting and all that kind of stuff. But that's the way I'm going to do them. Now, he does have 2 rivets in each one on the ends of the bullet loops. They are riveted to the back side there so they don't come loose. I don't know how the buckle is actually held in there. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 black rivets there. You can't see them because when the other end of the belt comes over, it's going to cover them up anyway, so you won't be able to see anything anyways. The end that goes through the buckle is rounded, and it's not really an English point. It's not really rounded. It's just kind of, it actually looks pretty sloppy cut on it, which I can do that. I can do sloppy. So that's what I'm going to get to working on. I'm going to get to working on the belt first. There's got to be some spacing issues worked out with where the holster attaches to the belt, where the bullet loops stop, because they don't come, they're away from the center of it a little bit. And I think the actual holster starts on like the first part of the holster starts at like the second bullet and then goes back around. So I need to kind of work those things out too. Now, I don't need to make a pattern for the belt. I've got this. This is all I need. For the holster itself, I do have to work that out. So I'm going to try to figure things out from some more screenshots. I should be able to figure out about how wide it is if I made all of my bullet loops 1 inch. And I think it looks pretty good compared with the screenshots. I should be able to count how many bullets are from the front to the back of it, and that should give me my dimension for the top widest part of the holster. And it is riveted onto the belt, which, like I said, saves a lot of leather. So I'm going to get to working on the pattern. I got my pattern paper right here. I'm going to move this stuff out of the way, get a piece cut out and start working on that. Okay, we're going to start working on the pattern here. Now there's a couple different things with this rifle. Not only is it the wrong caliber, it's not the TV show caliber. It does have a front or rear sight on it, which it doesn't need because, well, it's kind of hard to use anyways, but he did not have one on his firearm. Now this is it's a little bit longer. His had a 9-inch barrel on it. This one has got a, I believe it's a 12-inch barrel on here. So it is going to be about 3 inches longer. His ended pretty much where the fore end was on there. Now the top of the buttstock is about even with the top of the belt. We know the belt is 3.5 inches tall. So I'm going to set this up so that I am 3.5 inches above here. The buttstock should be right up to there. Now let me see, this is going to have to overlap onto the belt a little bit, so I'm going to go at least a 1/2 inch up on the belt. So I'm only going to go 3 inches on there. Put this at the top, center the firearm up on my line there. Looking at the pictures, it's not really hanging straight, it's kind of hanging down a little bit, so we want gravity to kind of dictate how this is gonna, well, that almost hangs straight, doesn't it? We're gonna get it right about there. Now I did mark a center line on here, and I've got 4 inches each way because I believe that it is gonna be 8 inches wide at the top. So we are going to come down a 1/2 inch, and I'm just going to kind of sketch this in here, and that's going to be the part where it's going to overlap, and then it just kind of it kind of comes down and then curves in and then does just slightly wider than the firearm itself. And I am kind of glancing over at the picture there a little bit. The loop does hang out over the holster a little bit, and so does the trigger guard. Now this loop is not exactly like the one in the TV show either. It is, his is more of a D loop, this is more of a big oval. Later on in the series they changed it, they had 3 guns, the other ones had the teardrop shape on there. And I do not have the teardrop shape one, so I don't have to worry about that. Now the end of the barrel does hang past the end of it a little bit, and I'm going to take this just past the fore end, and really that appears to be it. Nothing super fancy on this thing. It does not appear to be symmetrical. Then we'll get this cut out and see how it looks. All right, nothing real fancy. Yeah, I think that'll do it. It looks pretty close to what he has in the TV show. Now there's a couple other things. There's got to be the hook on the back here that holds the saddle ring, and then there's got to be the clip that comes right across here that holds it from flopping around. Those I'm going to have to make out of metal. This one is just bare metal. It's probably painted. This one is leather covered so it doesn't scuff up the wood there. So I need to find out where that is going to sit. Somewhere on that line right there. Will be the bottom of the hook. The clip down here, not entirely sure yet. It looks like it's almost midway up. Yeah, in the fore end there. So let's get this back on here. Right about there. And we're going to call the clip. We're going to go midway between the rear sight and maybe a little closer to the rear sight. So I'll put a line there. Somewhere in that neighborhood is where that clip will be. So I have the hook right here and the clip down here. Might as well go for that. Okay, so I've got me a decent sized piece of scrap here, and you would think it's wider on this end. I would have turned my pattern this way. One of the things you want to look at on your leather is you also, not only do you want to look at the front side, you want to look at the back side too, and it starts to get a little fuzzy down here, and I don't want that on the back side. It's a little smoother here, and it's easy to put some gum track on here and smooth it out a little bit with the glass slicker if I have to. If I don't, I'd rather not. But anyways, I've got this piece and I turned it the other way. It doesn't really matter on the front side. There's a little discoloration here, but since this holster is going to be black, that doesn't matter at all. So I've got my pattern all traced out there, and I'm going to get this thing cut out. And this scrap can be used for something else somewhere. Okay, I got my major pieces cut out, which there are only two of the major pieces, the belt and the holster itself. So what I need to do to make sure I get everything right on here is I need to fit the belt up to me first, and then I can adjust where the holster is going to go, where the belt loops are going to go, and the buckle and everything. So I'm going to get some of this other stuff out of the way here and work on getting this belt done up right. Now, typical belt, you know, the buckle's on the left, billet end goes in on the right there. So I'm going to get this, let me see. I think I'm going to start with the buckle end first, get the buckle fit up on there, and then I can pull this through and see where it's going to end up and then mark the end of it and get it trimmed up. So I may have to skive a little bit of this end here. I do have to narrow it down so it fits on the buckle, folds over, skive it a little bit, thin it out so that it's not so bulky when it's around the buckle. Okay, there's the belt. Now that I got it centered up on there, I can figure out exactly where I'm going to put the holster itself. And then where I'm going to start the bullet loops, and then how many I can put around it. Okay, I did all my fitting, my mathing, and my trying out and everything, and there are 31 bullet loops on here. And the second one is where the holster itself starts on there. I've already got some light pencil marks on there, so I've already started punching a couple of the holes in here. And I got to go through and mark everything. I got to mark everything really, really carefully too, because if they're off a little bit, it's not going to show that bad, but I want to try to get them as close to perfect as I can. I really do not like this oval punch here, but there are some really nice ones, but they're quite a bit more expensive. I wish it was just a little bit narrower. And there's a couple other things here that are not like I originally planned. Originally, I planned on the belt being 7 ounce and the bullet loops being about 4 ounce, because that's what I did on my little test piece I did here. Unfortunately, I did not have enough 7 ounce for the belt, so I ended up having to use 9 ounce, and I do not have any more 4 ounce, or at least not enough 4 ounce to make all of these bullet loops, but I've got a whole bunch of 3 ounce. It will work. It's going to be a little bit thinner. I'm going to go ahead and start punching all this stuff out, and maybe I'm not going to finish this up this weekend. Maybe I'll go ahead and order a piece of 4 ounce so that I can at least do the bullet loops like I planned. I would like them to be just a little bit beefier than 3 ounce. The 3 ounce stuff I got is mostly for liners on the inside of holsters when I do regular revolver holsters. Anyways, I'm going to get to marking this stuff out and keep on punching holes. I got 62 of them to punch. All right, now let's get back to this project. I'd like to thank the Postal Service for taking 2 weeks to deliver the package 38 miles via Nashua, New Hampshire, Indianapolis, Indiana, and then finally to my place in Ohio. Anyways, this should be my rolled up hide of 4 to 5 ounce leather, and I should be able to cut my strips out of this and make my bullet loops finally. Has nothing to do with Weaver Leather. They are a fine company, and I really have never had any problems before with shipping, but for some reason the post office just decided it really needed to tour the country before it came to me. Yeah, that's more like what I wanted for the bullet loops. Now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get me a straight edge on here, and this thing is going to be way bigger than my table. So I'm going to have to move some stuff around. Okay, I trimmed up one straight edge on the big piece of leather. This is a whole side, strap side they call it. And I took one of the little scrap pieces that I had from trimming off of there, cut me a 3/4 inch wide strap. I don't know how long it is yet, but it did 15 rounds in there, and it was not a very long piece. And it seems to work just about perfect. I got them kind of toward the end where the bullet is, because that case is slightly tapered, and I mean very slightly tapered. So as you push them farther down in there, they're going to get a little bit tighter, and that's kind of what I want. This is going to stretch and all that kind of stuff, especially once I get it wet. Now, I haven't dyed anything yet. That's going to get it wet. And it does not deform the belt very much, not like it did on the Paladin holster I made. And I think that's because I did 2 holes per loop instead of one single one. Doing one single one will kind of hold the round up a little higher, because both pieces of leather got to go through that same hole. When I spread them apart a little bit, it allows the bullet to come down a little closer to the belt. And I think that's going to work out just perfect. Now I'm going to take my strap cutter and cut a 3/4 inch piece, long piece out of the whole thing. I would love to get this done, all the bullet loops in one shot. I got 15 rounds in here. It's a pretty short piece that I trimmed off of this one. So that's about, I would say it's about 3 foot long. I definitely got more than 6 feet of leather on the hide there. So I'm going to get this out of the way and get that piece cut. Okay, I've made my hook and my catch piece, I guess, and I went ahead and put some contact cement on here. So I'm going to glue and stitch this on here. I was kind of thinking about stitching up a little sleeve to slide over there, but I wanted glue on here because when the gun goes in and out of here, it might pull it off. So I went ahead and pre-punched some light holes in there, and hopefully I can get this thing on there without messing it up too bad. and I am going to fold it over there so it's one piece, kind of. No seam at the end of it here. All right, hopefully that'll do it. I'm going to get some stitches in this thing and then get it trimmed up and hopefully slid in the holster and get it going from there. Okay, I think I got it all in there the way it's supposed to be. At least pretty close. Right now it's just loosely fit together. I don't have my rivets set up there. I do have my hook on there. I do need to do something with that hook. Put some plastic dip or something on it. I got the leather sewn over this piece here. It's a little tight, but I can loosen that up by bending that piece of metal a little bit. And I think that's going to work. So the only thing left to do now is dye everything and then get my bullet loops in there, and then I can go ahead and set my rivets. I do have 3 rivets on there to kind of keep it from twisting a little bit. 2 rivets for the hook on the top there. I need to paint that before I get it put in there. But right now I'm going to get everything set up to do some dyeing, and then yeah, that should be about it. That's the only sewing I had to do, was this piece on here. The bottom seam is a little wonky, but yeah, I think it'll be all right. I didn't see how it was done in the original one, so if it's a little off, it's okay. So yeah, I'm going to get everything dyed up right now, get it all taken back apart, which is pretty easy to do. There's my hook piece, my clamp piece, whatever you want to call it. The hook is in here, and get that taken out. And like I said, these rivets are just popped on there. They're not set, so they're pretty easy to get apart. A little rough on the fingernails sometimes. But I'm going to get everything set up to dye. Okay, I have got my leather all dyed and got the edges slicked with some gum track. Now I'm going to put some of this, this is leather balm with atom wax on here. It's the same thing I used on the Paladin holster. I like the way it turned out, and hopefully this one will turn out just as nice. A little mess there. It happens. This is both a sealer, conditioner, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, I know it's going to work. It worked really well on the Paladin holster, and it's going to work really well on this one too. And it does a pretty good job of sealing in the dye too, so you don't get no dye bleed or rub off or anything. That is a 2-step process. You apply it, rub it in there, and then you buff it. And you will get a little bit of shine to it. It's not super high gloss, not like patent leather, but it does have a nice finish to it, I think. That worked out just perfect. One strip. I did prepare two of them just in case I had to piece it together, and I'd probably riveted them in the middle or something, but one was long enough to do all of them with, oh, I'd say about 18 inches left over. But I've got to rivet this on this end now. I've already got it riveted there, and then that part is done. Okay, there it is, the mare's leg holster. Now there is a leg strap on here, and I put the wrong buckle on it because I didn't make a keeper for it, and I should have thought of that ahead of time, but I did not. But anyways, you can't have this thing tight around the leg, because as you step, it needs to move, because this thing is not going to move with your leg. So as far as practical, the firearm's not practical, the holster's not practical either, but I think I can move around with it all right, with it being loose like that. So it won't be too bad. Now, I don't know if they had something behind there to keep it stiffer or what, but I've seen him draw it, and he just kind of pulls it out like that and puts it back in, and he just kind of snaps it back in there. And I might have it just a little bit too tight to do that, but I've got all the bullet loops on there, 31 45-70 bullet loops on there, even though the gun is not a 45-70, it is a 45 Colt, and his was a 44-40. But I did put the strap on there in one piece. The buckle I had to make out of a Santa buckle. I had to cut it down to make it look more like the one on the TV show. But I don't think it turned out too bad. It's not, like I said, it's not a very practical gun, and it's definitely not a practical holster. So sitting or running or something, that leg strap is really going to get in the way, because you just can't bend too far with it. Kneeling, bending, something like that, it's going to move all over the place, and that thing is really going to restrict you there. But I kind of like it. It's pretty cool looking. Pretty cool firearm. I'm not going to be drawing as fast as he did anyways, that's for sure. And that's probably going to cause me some little rub marks and stuff. I did put some smooth rivets in there, but not the best way to carry one of these firearms. That's probably why you see a lot of them that are aftermarket or whatever are made a little bit different, so you don't have to worry about things like that. As far as the movie gun went, they could care less if it got scratched up and stuff. Anyways, thanks for taking a look at the mare's leg holster with me, and one of these days we'll get out there on the range and give this thing a few shots and see how it does. If you could, reach over here and hit this button to check out some of my other videos. Hit the little round one down here to subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching Small Caliber Arms Review.